Welcome to the Wake Up Dad Show. This is episode number 8.
I think it's important for dads out there listening to recognize that, the women in our life, particularly our wives and daughters and whoever it is in your life that is female, they will constantly test you, constantly test our manhood, constantly test our strength. And it's up to us whether we falter. There'll be times when we fall over, but it's up to us whether we become a shell of ourselves.
Are you confused and overwhelmed about your role in all the craziness that is being a dad? Are you struggling to create the life you hope for? Are you looking for other dads to share your struggles and your triumphs? Or do you just need help waking up in the morning? Join your host, Dr. Scott Vatcher, as he explores the amazing and sometimes crazy world of being a dad. This is the Wake Up Dad Show.
On the interview today, I've got with me a good friend of mine and just all-round awesome dad. His name is Marcus Pearce. He believes niching your business is essential, but niching your life is disastrous. A journalist by trade who now runs Australia's #1 health and lifestyle podcast network called The Wellness Couch, Marcus created the Exceptional Life Blueprint in 2014 to help people rise from mediocre to magnificent in each area of life and not just one area. He spreads his message through podcasting as a host of a show called 100 Not Out, speaking engagements, mentoring clients, online programs, and running events. Most recently, Marcus ran a longevity retreat to the Greek island of Ikaria. Ikaria? Is that how you say it, Mark?
Ikaria. Yeah, Ikaria.
Ikaria. Oh, cool.
That's the one.
We'll have to talk about that one. Known as the island where people forget to die. And you'll also find him as the executive producer for the Wellness Summit, an annual 2-day event held in Australia, which is coming up very soon. Marcus lives in Byron Bay with his beautiful wife, Sarah, and 3 children, Maya, Darby, and Tommy. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. It's I've got to say, I love what you're doing with the theme of this podcast. It's there's definitely, let's say, a massive gap in the market for this message to be shared.
And the first thing I say to most people is this dad thing. It's not that I've got it figured out and I want to share my message. It's that I'm trying to figure it out, and I figured I'd take people along the ride with me.
Well, I think it's a bit like life purpose, though, isn't it? It's like, you could figure out, the meaning of your life today, and then tomorrow it can all go pear-shaped. So parenting's a lot like that. I don't know about you and the listeners, but as soon as Sarah and I go, wow, aren't the kids in good form? As soon as you say it, bang, there's something that happens that totally shatters and humbles that perception. So I don't think we'll ever figure it out, to be honest. I think it's one of those roller coaster rides that just goes on forever. And as soon as we think we've figured it out, complacency sets in, and then our kids come back to humble us, sometimes in the most acute and obscene ways. But it's always an incredible challenge. And without doubt, I know we're both biased, but definitely one of life's most fulfilling challenges as well.
Yeah, a friend of mine, a number of years ago, I think it might have been right when my kid was born, or maybe even before that. He has a few kids that are older. He said, they've taught me more than I could ever teach them. And I didn't get it at the time. I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But after now 6 years of it, wow. It's very humbling, and it's been a huge education, the biggest education I've ever received, that's for sure. So get us started today. Tell us a bit about you becoming, the dad you are today. 3 kids. How old are they?
Well, I'm in those similar phases to you. Maya is 6. She's a New Year's Day baby, so she's 7 on New Year's Day. Darby is well, he would like to tell you he's 3 3/4, and Tommy at the time of this recording is just ticked past 12 weeks. So Tommy's quite fresh. Yes. And Sarah doesn't think she's finished. She had the audacity to tell me the day after Tommy was born that she thinks there's unfinished business.
Wow.
So I don't know when it's going to end. But I am a big subscriber, Scotty, to Happy Wife, Happy Life. Some people really don't like that, but I do think my Sarah loves being a mum, and if she wants to continue being a mum and raising kids, then I am more than willing to help her. I think once you've had one, or maybe even once you've had 2, it sounds boring, but having the 3rd child is definitely... I was working the next day. I think I was even exercising the next day. Once you've got your lifestyle and your pattern, 2, 4, 6, 8, I mean, it's all still raising kids and having dinners at 5 o'clock, which some of my friends can't believe we have dinner at 5 o'clock. But like it's just more kids at the table, and if you love it, it's just a hell of a lot more fun. So if Sarah wants more kids, I always thought we'd have 8 kids, and then we had to settle on 4 labours. So maybe it will end up being 4 labours. I don't get my 4 sets of twins, which I was hoping for, but that's all right.
Twins is what you're hoping for. Wow.
No,
okay.
no, I always loved the idea of a long grandfather table with 4 kids on one side, 4 kids on the other, and mum and dad at either end. It sounds so ridiculous, but I just had this vision. My mum, mind you, is one of 15 kids. That's an incredible story in itself.
Wow.
But I just when Sarah and I first met, and you start getting serious and you start going, so how many kids do you want and what do you want and all the rest? I was like, 8 kids, wouldn't it be great? 4 on one side, 4 on the other. You and me at either end, engaging with our family and the rest. She's like, 8 kids. I'm like, well, if that's too many, let's go on 4 labours, and I'll just hope like hell for 4 sets of twins. But we might end up doing the 4 labours and out will come 4, well, maybe 5. You never know what happens next.
You never know. You could get the 5th.
That's it.
Well, let's dive into the show here. In the show we do talk about the 5 P's of dadhood. Now this show is dedicated to dads who want more, dads who have fallen asleep or become unconscious about themselves and have just lost themselves as men, as dads, as lovers, as people. And there's 5 main categories that I think need to be addressed, and I call them the 5 P's of dadhood. So purpose is number 1, of course. That's the reason why you're here and what you want to leave behind or your legacy. Power is reaching your optimal health through exercise and diet, nutrition, and all the rest of it. Parenting, of course, is part of being a dad, being the best version of yourself. Providing, taking care of your family, and passion in relationships and in your life. With those 5 P's talked about, which one do you feel like you can share a story about with a struggle or a win that dads could benefit from?
Oh, well, where do we start? You want the challenges or the victories first? Look, I think there's a lot to be learnt in purpose and power. I think really, as you say them, I think they are the 2 foundations. Every wife wants their husband to be a rock. Really, and it's like you get to choose between a rock, a stone, a pebble. In times of stress, you might feel like you go more pebble-like. When you've really got your mojo, you are that rock. I like to use the analogy of being a yacht in the ocean. When the storm comes in, our women really are, in the most beautiful ways. They're like thunderstorms. They've got this incredible energy, that feminine power. It is remarkable, and it's up to us to be that yacht in the ocean, bobbing up and down. Are we going to capsize under the pressure of being an incredible dad, an incredible husband, and incredible friend, son, brother, whatever it is, the role that you play? Are you going to falter, or are you going to thrive under that? And so just recognize, I think it's important for dads out there listening to recognize that, the women in our life, particularly our wives and daughters and whoever it is in your life that is female, they will constantly test you, constantly test our manhood, constantly test our strength. And it's up to us whether we falter. There'll be times when we fall over, but it's up to us whether we become a shell of ourselves, so to speak, and that's really becoming pebble-like in size, or whether we do maintain that masculine strength, that ability to be the rock, that, what the Buddhists would talk about being, say, the path of detachment versus the path of compassion. If we look at the ways that we would achieve spiritual enlightenment, if we were going down the Buddhist path, you'll generally find that most women are looking to go down the path of compassion, and most male energies are looking to go down the path of detachment. And you think of that, and then you can really understand why so many conflicts occur between, masculine and feminine energy. And that's because blokes want their girls to care less, to be more detached, and girls want their guys to care more and be more compassionate. And I'm being very generalist in nature here, but we must realize that if we are to have that purpose that you talk about and that power, we must maintain our masculine strength. But at times, it's really important that we recognize that to care so much is not a bad thing. To deeply care about what's happening with your kids, or what's happening in the school, or what happened at that birthday party, or what's happening with the kids' development. I mean, this is the stuff that a lot of guys aren't thinking about day in, day out. I don't know what you're like, Scott, but when you go to work and you're adjusting your patients, you're not going, I wonder how my kids are developing. I wonder what Tommy's up to at school right now. I wonder what Maya's doing with her friends right now. I wonder if they like their lunch. I wonder if they'll sleep well tonight. I wonder if they'll sleep better. Generally, to generalize, that's what mum's thinking about. When dad's at work, he's thinking about work. But when mum's at work, which for a lot of mums is in the house, they're thinking about what birthday present will I buy for that kid on the weekend? How are the kids going at school? I wonder if they're getting along with their friends okay. Are they breaking up with that friend and moving friends and all the rest? This is something which in relationship, a lot of people try and make right or wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's just completely different. And so I know I'm giving you a long answer here, but for us men to really reclaim or really own that purpose and power, I think it's incredibly important that we define what it is for us, but then we hold on to it for dear life, because that's when we can truly feel like the rock in our family. We don't want to mold ourselves into something that our wife wants us to be or that our kids want us to be. Our true rock comes from being the best version of us, not being what others expect of us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to make, because we do tend to get lost, and that's the whole point of this podcast is why I called it Wake Up Dad, because most of us have become sort of unconscious about
we want
life.
to please our wives, we want to please our kids, and when we go to please, and don't get me wrong, it's great to please, but there are certain ways to do it and certain ways not to do it. When we go to please, because we all want to make the people in our life happy. If you ask any man, what do you want for your wife? I just want it to be happy. And sometimes the way we make our wives happy is that we actually, instead of making them happy, we just make them not sad. And that's when we lose polarity. So, let's just get all deep and meaningful for a moment. You speak to a lot of guys and they're like, if you look at, say, the love languages of, say, most people may have heard of the 5 love languages. If you haven't, you can do the quiz online. It's a fascinating psychology in relationships. But if you look at most blokes, their love language for most blokes is going to be physical touch and maybe words of affirmation. But a lot of the time, we just love a hand being run through our hair, a kiss, a cuddle, our hands being held, a hand on the leg, whatever it is. We can go to the point of making love, but it doesn't have to be making love. It can just be anything little. But in the busyness of life, a lot of people find, you ask a lot of wives, and it's like, do you give your husband a kiss and a hug when he comes home? And they're like, oh, look, it sounds great, but I'm so busy getting dinner on the table and the kids ready for bed or bath or whatever it is, that by the time hubby comes home, it's like he's getting straight into the thick of house admin or getting, helping me or the rest. And a lot of the time, there's just not that time to stop and go, hi, honey, I'm glad you're home. You're home safe. Someone lost a husband on the way home tonight because they were in a fatal car accident or whatever. Thank God that's not you. So happy to have you home. Kiss and a cuddle. There's that showing of appreciation. But the challenge is, as guys, we often, instead of making our I'm just going to use our wives as a general example here, our partners happy, we actually just let them be not sad. So to give you an example, we might say in the early days, in the honeymoon period, we will crack onto them regularly. We'll schmooze them. We'll take them on dates. We'll take them on surprises. We'll take them on surprise holidays. We'll keep them guessing. But really, we take the lead. And if you look at most masculine, feminine energies, masculine energy takes the lead. In order to take the lead, you've got to care enough to take the lead. You've got to put the thought and the emotion and desire into it. But if we don't take the lead, then female energy will under stress really adopt a masculine mask, and then so the women will start taking the lead and they'll control situations and environments and the rest, and then we lose our polarity, but we also lose our keeping them happy. It's not that they're unhappy, but they're just not necessarily fulfilled, and so there's a real shift that must take place in order to reclaim that. I hope I'm making sense here, Scotty.
Yeah, for sure. How about going a little bit further? Like what can dads do if that makes sense, if that resonates? Like, oh wow,
yeah,
that's
for sure.
me. What are some actions?
So if the spark has gone out of relationship, you have to, I think, really go back to what you did at the beginning, which made you so attractive to the woman that you're married to or with today. So did you take them away for a weekend? If you did and you now have kids, you're probably like, oh, that is so hard time-wise or money-wise. You don't have to have the same expectations, but you just want to take your girls out of their environment where they actually begin to, whether it's going out for dinner. For some people, a really good thing to do as a great metaphor for improving relationship and life is to go out for dancing classes. Because if you look at what can happen in relationship where, say, the feminine energy takes the lead and the masculine energy is not, you go to dancing classes and guess what? Instead of the man taking the lead, the woman actually starts running the show. And that is not what you want. On your first date, generally speaking, that's not how it happened. the man took the lead because you were going out on that date. It was very special, and when a woman is falling in love, they melt. They, for want of a better term, they let go. They let you take the lead. But over time, when life gets busy and the rest, that doesn't necessarily happen. So to bring that back, going to something like dancing classes is a really good idea. If you go to a movie, that's great, but you'll probably find you end up talking about the kids or just school admin or whatever it is. If you go out for dinner, it's a really tricky thing to not talk about, say, the kids, and to talk about the deep and meaningfuls that you spoke about when you're first courting and going out. So something like dancing classes, or something where you really have to re-own that masculine, feminine power, is a good idea.
So say it was something like, so dancing classes one, I can guarantee there'd be some dads out there going, nah,
I'm not doing it. So the question is why?
No way.
Exactly. Because why though, Scotty? Is it because he goes, I can't dance, I'm a terrible dancer, it's no fun? I'm just using this as a way to reclaim your energies.
So could you say you were into rock climbing and your partner wasn't, and so then you could take on that masculine role and teach them?
But if they're not interested, why would they go?
Oh, no, I mean, if they are interested, obviously you're not going to take them to something they don't want to do. But if there's some kind of,
tests of trust and tests of ownership.
Yeah.
So it's all a trust game, right? A lot of the time when you go to dancing classes, they're so used to being in control that in order to let go of control, they have to increase their trust threshold. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time, that trust isn't there because we know that feminine energy remembers everything and masculine energy forgets everything. Yeah, people might be laughing at that right now or getting really angry, but we blokes, just to sound, I mean, you can be a male with a core feminine and you can be a female with a core masculine, but most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, if a male is wearing a feminine mask, he's still a male. He's still masculine energy at his core. If a female has overtaken is wearing a masculine mask, often she is still feminine at her core. So dancing classes is one way where that mask has to come off, and in order to do that, it's about trusting. But feminine energy, or let's just say your wife might remember the time where you said you'd do the gardening and you didn't. You said you'd make dinner and you didn't. You said you'd be home to put the kids to bed and you weren't. You said you'd be home to pack for that holiday and you weren't. And women will remember all those things. We want them to forget, but they don't. They just remember everything, right? They're elephants. Whereas we forget all of the stuff. We can often forget all the bad stuff. Like if you ask me about all the challenges of raising kids, I'd forget 95% of them. And I'm not alone here. Most blokes, they'll remember the tough times. They might remember the first year was really hard. But if you ask them to get all of the details, they're not going to remember lots of the details. They'll remember the big picture of it was tough. But they're not going to remember. The girls can almost give you a day-by-day blow description of everything that happened. In the dark times of a relationship or raising children or the rest. So it's important to recognize that and that it's not going to change. There are other alternatives to, say, dancing, but it's more about just anything that tests the trust that you have in the relationship. Traveling's another good one. You know, who's making all the decisions, who's doing the leading. Anything that challenges that.
Okay, awesome. That's some interesting stuff there.
I probably haven't even answered your first question because I know you wanted to know about challenges. I don't even know if I've answered the first question about power and purpose, but as you can tell, I can talk the leg off a chair.
Well, exactly, and that's the whole point of this, is to take us on a journey of some of the experiences that you've had that could help us out. So, I mean, that's fantastic. So, yeah, back to that question. Is there any particular struggles that you've had that you think you've overcome or are overcoming at the moment that...
Yeah, absolutely. I think the passion one is the big one if I think of the major challenges. I mean, there's been challenges in each P that you talk about, but I think one that is important to relate to others. And this is something that I feel very strongly about in terms of the expectations on couples around passion. The thing for me is, as a journalist by trade, my view in looking at the media and the way that, ideal relationships are discussed in the media doesn't make me feel very empowered around relationship, because everyone's different. When I see studies about, how many times a week should you be having sex with your partner, I mean, I don't know about you, Scott, but it varies for everyone. I know some couples that were back into it a day after a baby was born. I've got a client who's a GP who said, you would not believe what I've seen in the hospital ward. And I know others who haven't been back for a long time. And everyone is different. And I feel for couples out there that are trying to fit into a model that is projected only by people that are looking to get media coverage. And if you want to get media coverage, you have to come up with newsworthy or very novel messages. So if you hear that, you should be having sex 3 times a week with your partner, well, if you're not, that's no reason to feel guilty, to feel shallow, subpar, inadequate, or anything else. What you really want to recognize is, what are the expectations that you both have in your relationship, and are they being communicated? For most people, expectations in relationship are not being communicated. So blokes don't know the rules of the game to fulfill their ladies, and ladies don't know the rules of the game to fulfill their men. And when the rules of the game are discussed and declared, you know what? Without sounding simplistic, it's easy to win the game when you know what they are. And so I share this as someone who, for want of a better term, since we've had kids, there is absolutely no way that we've made love as much as we did before we had children. But I'm happy to tell anyone that, because the rules of the game change when you have children. If for me to put the same level of expectation on my wife while she is raising children, spending her days from 6 a.m. in the morning till 7 p.m. at night, in order for me to have the same expectation on Sarah during the child bearing years as to before those childbearing years, it's completely unfair. And I challenge any bloke to challenge me on that, to say, no, she should be meeting those expectations with or without kids and the rest. Well, guys, I got to say, you got to respect the differences in your women. The games change as soon as you become parents. Your values change. So while Sarah used to be thinking about other things to do with her time and her money, as soon as she's a mum, she starts thinking about in way different ways to spend her time and her money. As you know, Scott, Sarah used to be a chiropractor, or she still is, but she's not a practicing chiropractor. You would say she is raising children at the moment, and that's because she felt like an average chiro and an average mum while she was trying to do both. Now, for me to put the expectation on Sarah that, no, babe, chiropractors earn good money and you should be going to work whilst you've got the capacity to, and you're in the age bracket to do it, and you could be earning good money and the rest, that's a very male brain way to think of it. Rather than thinking about what keeps Sarah fulfilled, what brings her levels of joy and happiness, someone asked me the other day, I was running a retreat for my higher end clients on this very topic called Love and Relationships Mastery. And someone said, do you feel that you are number one in Sarah's mind, or do you feel that the kids are number one in Sarah's mind? And it was a really good question, because this is something that a lot of parents have difficulty with when they have children, is like, is your spouse or partner number one or number two? How does it work? I would say that I am definitely number one when it comes to Sarah, but it looks like number two because she spends so much time with the children. But the best thing about Sarah is she allows me to fulfill my purpose, which is your number one P, right? She doesn't give me grief about taking financial risks, business risks, running retreats and being away. I've just been away for 6 nights and 7 days. Some people would call that negligent. I ran this retreat in Ikaria, which you spoke about at the beginning, I was away for 2 weeks. Tommy was 17 days old when I left, and he was 34 days when I came back. He doubled in age by the time I'd come back. Some people would call that negligent. Some people would call me a bad dad. Some people would think that Sarah should have made me stay home. That doesn't work like that now in our relationship. She allows me to live my purpose with no grievances. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was a challenge, but there's no loss of love as a result. The rules of the game change when you become parents, and I think it's really important for relationships and couples to consider that, are you projecting values from your pre-kid days onto your relationship in your kid days? And if you are, it's not fair on either of you. It's too hard to win the game when you do that.
Yeah, right back to a few minutes ago when you were talking about it, I love that idea of looking at ideal relationships versus real relationships, and those expectations do change. And if you're not communicating that with your partner, then how do you expect to win? How can you possibly win? Because in your mind, and I think that's a very typical, I don't know if it's a masculine or just a male thing, we can tend to pretend or think that they should know what we're thinking.
Absolutely, and vice versa. We're constantly trying to crack the code of our partner's mind. We're constantly, because we want to make them happy. We're going, right, what's she thinking here? Most girls, when they have a good idea, they'll go, babe, what do you think of checking out that house? Right, and we crack the code and go, that means they want to check out the house. Whereas we go, babe, there's this incredible house. I want to go check it out. Let's go. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a very different way of communicating. The male brain goes, well, before we had kids, we had sex 3 times a week. On average, I can look back on the last 4 weeks. I can see we had sex 12 times. That's 3 times a week. And then we get 6 weeks into the relationship post-kids. We definitely haven't had sex 18 times. And we're going, all right, there's something wrong here. Now, we label it there's something wrong here. And then rather than having the communication around these expectations, we just start to bear resentment. We don't say anything. We just start to bear resentment because we want to keep our wives happy. There's this part of us that doesn't want to bring us up because we see that they're tired, they're emotional, they're getting their groove on as a parent, whether it's their first, second, or third child. We're not really sure what to do, but we've got our own needs to look after as well. How do we bring it up? The best way to bring it up is to be the rock, not the pebble, right? The pebble gets needy and greedy and says, babe, we're not having sex anymore, right? That does nothing for the relationship. We've got to be the rock and go, babe, you are working your ring off at the moment. This is incredibly new. It's novel. It's hard. All the rest of it. How can I support you? We want to make sure that we're supporting our wife. That's the most attractive thing that we can do. And then it's important to have the discussion about, all right, how does this new culture of our relationship look? How do we create these date nights where, on a Saturday night, we're not checking emails. We've got a DVD lined up. We've got some ice cream ready to go or a dessert. We may have cooked dinner and let our wife just totally relax, whatever it is. I don't care. But what are the rules of the game where we have quality time more than quantity time, all right? You might be ships in the night, Monday to Friday, but come Friday night, Saturday night, that is special time. And it's no longer the sparks flying where you're making love for 4 hours because at the same time you've got a new baby whilst they're waking up for a feed. Your other toddler's woken up because they want you to help them take them to the toilet. Someone's got an ear infection and you're not getting any sleep. So we've got to take away the expectations that we had pre-kids and create a new culture of relationship where we're meeting each other's expectations. It could be a 10-minute foot massage rather than a 1-hour love-making session, if that makes sense. We've got to realize that quality time over quantity time must be the new philosophy. And how do we meet their expectations? And then you realize pretty quickly that your expectations are actually lower in the best possible way than what you think they were. And there are other ways in order for you to meet expectations rather than the one-dimensional way it was before kids, which was just counting how many times a week you had sex or made love. And I think that's really important. I know we're just talking about the physical here, but this is stuff that people probably don't hear enough about on a podcast. I think it's really important to talk about. And the sooner we can open up that communication from a place of love, not from a horse trade, like I give you this, so you give me that. That's totally out of the question. Unconditional love has no fine print on the contract. It's not like, well, I got a boys' weekend away, so let's get you a girls' weekend away. It's completely unconditional. We've got to find a way to make that the culture of the relationship and then find a way to make sure that we can keep each other fulfilled and meet each other's needs within the relationship rather than outside of the relationship.
Hold on now. I'm just taking some notes here.
Well, it's all been recorded, so all of us can consume back enough times.
So I know you can talk about this stuff forever, and I guarantee I will get you back on this podcast. But time is running out, so I'm going to give you an interesting question. If you had 2 minutes in front of a room of 1,000 dads, what would be your 2-minute wake-up dad message to them?
Wow. Okay. Well, you talk about power earlier. My power as a dad is to get up in the morning and exercise. If I don't move in the morning, I'm a more average dad, more average husband, more average, business owner, all of the rest of it. So you got to do one thing in the morning. You got to have morning cave time. In other words, you got to give to yourself. Don't emasculate yourself by continually giving to others without giving to yourselves. But do it in a way that makes it a win-win for everyone else. Have your cave time. We all need it. We all have that nothing box. So just say if that means nothing to you, make sure you YouTube the nothing box. But we all have that space where we need to give to ourselves. But we can't be so selfish that we only fulfill our needs. As a dad, our challenge to be that rock is to fulfill the needs of our wife and to fulfill the needs of our children, which means we must get curious as to what are they. Do your kids love quality time more, or do they love a cuddle? My son Darby, he loves physical touch. He wants to snuggle in the morning. Maya wants me to read her a story. She doesn't want kisses and cuddles. She wants me to read her a story. So my job is to fulfill her needs, okay? Not to go, well, I want physical touch, because she doesn't want that. So we have to recognize as a man, and if we're going to be the best version of a man in today's age, we must go about fulfilling everyone else's needs at the same time as fulfilling our needs. In business, we'd call that a win-win relationship, not a win-lose, not a lose-win, not a compromise. Don't compromise your life. And when it comes to relationship, don't play small. Have a look at your peer group. Do they have exceptional standards for their relationships, or do they have average standards? If they've got average standards, recognize that we become who we hang around. So if you've got dads that think their wife is a ball and chain or a war office, or they're going to run it by the boss, then you're going to have that language as well. That is not the nature of an exceptional relationship. If you have to cultivate an exceptional one, you need a better peer group, and know that you deserve that because you're an exceptional human being and you weren't put on this earth to be mediocre.
Fantastic. So guys, go back and listen to that little bit a few times. That 2-minute message, you could probably just repeat that for 15 times and get your 30-minute message, because there was a whole whack of stuff in there. So how do people get in touch with you to learn more about your seminars and what you're doing?
The best site to go to is marcuspearce.com.au. That's pearce.com.au. And then you've got the Wellness Couch podcast linked from there, 100 Not Out. You can email me from there. You can find me on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, at Marcus D. Pearce. That's easy. And then email is just marcus@marcuspearce.com.au. I'm a stickler for replying to emails. If you're going to say hi to me, I'm going to say hi back. If I can help you with anything from one-on-one mentoring for dads out there, or from doing events, whatever it is, if you even just have a question, more than happy to answer that for you over email or social media.
Fantastic. So the some of the links that I'll include in the show notes, guys, is the book, The 5 Love Languages. I think that's a great one to look at for your relationship with your partner. But then there's also a version of that for kids, which is great. And I'll put in the YouTube clip, The Nothing Box, and Marcus Pearce's contact details. So thanks again, Marcus Pearce. That was absolutely brilliant discussion. It got hot and heavy there for a while, and I think this is one people will listen to a couple of times.
Oh, well, as you know, there's so much we did not cover. So, as I say, more than happy to talk more. And apologies if I chewed everyone's ears off. They got nothing left. But as I say, I think it's a very important topic. And Scotty, well done on filling this gap in the market, because it's definitely a message that more dads need to hear. Well done.
Thank you. So, guys, check out the website, www.thewakeupdadshow.com. Go to iTunes, give us a rating so we can reach more people. My email is drscott@thewakeupshow.com. So we'll see you guys next time.
Do you want to know more about the Wake Up Dad movement? Go to www.thewakeupdadshow.com to download any and all past issues of the show, claim your free gift, or to directly ask Dr. Scott any questions you have. Continue the conversation on the Facebook group Wake Up Dad. Share this podcast with other dads on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure to subscribe to the show and give us a rating so we can reach more dads. And dads, one last thing. Wake up!